Well, welcome. And today's devotion is from Daniel, one of the prophetic books. There are 17 historical books in the Old Testament, 17 prophetical books in the Old Testament, and 5 poetical books in the Old Testament. Daniel is the least number of words of all of the major prophets, and they're only major prophets because of the volume that they wrote. The prophet of Daniel is 12 chapters, and it's approximately 15 pages in most Bibles. It's at 12,100 words, and it covers a period roughly from 605 BC down to 536 BC. Contemporary writers of the time, Jeremiah and Ezekiel. And we certainly are going to take a hard look at as many applications as we can make to our lives in the study of the book of Daniel and these devotions. And we've already taken a look at an introduction yesterday, the last devotion. Today we want to take a look at the time of the writing, and we're going to also take a look at a couple of verses to see if we can apply it to our lives today. One of the wonderful things about the Bible is it helps us to know the time frame by very often telling us who was ruling and reigning in Judah or Jerusalem, who was ruling and reigning in the northern kingdom as Israel, or who was ruling and reigning in the world. It really helps us to put a time frame around a lot of the writings, and that's the case of Daniel 1. As we open up, it tells us in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, that's the southern kingdom, and Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king in Babylon. And so we see the time frame of being the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim. And then we are told very quickly that there's been a special instruction given by the king of Babylon to go into Israel and to take some of the choicest of the young men that are there so that they can be brought back to Babylon and used in service of Babylon. And we know that of course, was one of those persons was Daniel. But I want us to take a quick look at verse 3. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of the officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal family and of the nobles. I think it's interesting that Nebuchadnezzar saw the people of Israel as being smart and intelligent and useful. I think it shows and reflects quite a bit on God and his people. Even today, many of the top scientists and experts in the world come out of Israel, and it's a tiny little country to have brought about so many wonderful scientists and so many professional people. Nevertheless, Nebuchadnezzar is smart enough to ask to bring them. And I'm certain that he had some military ideas as well, because he felt if he had some of the nobles and some of the choice people out of Israel, that they were less likely to try to fight him or to invade Babylon. And so there was probably 2 methods to his madness, but nevertheless, he recognized their talent. And you can see that clearly as we look at verse 4. Youths in whom is no defect, who were good-looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with the understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had the ability for serving the king's court. And he ordered him to teach them the literature and the language of the Chaldeans. Well, there's no question whatsoever that Nebuchadnezzar acknowledged the abilities of the Jews that were living in Israel, and that he wanted the cream of the crop. It's interesting that on some type of view, you might say that almost like the Hitler and looking for a superhuman race, only picking the good-looking ones and the really intelligent ones. But nevertheless, he recognized the ability of the Jews, the children of God that were in Israel, and he brought them into his country. But here's what I want you to put your antenna up about. He was also going to teach them his ways. He was going to try to mold them and make them better Babylonians. And he was going to try to mold their plastic minds. Now, it's very interesting that Daniel resisted that, and that he had been strengthened by the time he was 16, which is approximately the age that he was brought into captivity at Babylon, that he was so strong in his faith that he was able to resist the transformation that they were trying to do to his mind. Now, where's the application in that? Let me challenge you, parents. Let me challenge you, young people that will one day be parents. Let me challenge you, grandparents. You need to train your children strongly now, because when they enter into our secular school system, and many will have to enter into the secular school system, they're going to be confronted with liberal and non-believing people, professors, people who seem to have authority and knowledge and wisdom that will try to mold their minds. Even in grade school, if they're not going to Christian school, there's many, many times that you hear the reports of children coming home where the people have tried to mold and make their thoughts different than the Christian values that we know are right. And I can tell you from my own personal experience going to school and college that I was challenged in my faith on a regular basis by liberal professors who did not believe. They didn't even believe there was a God, much less believing in God's ways. So here's the challenge and the thought from today's devotion. Train up your child in the way he should go. Be sure that you instill in him the kind of principles that were instilled in Daniel, so that he was able to stand firm against all of the challenges to mold his mind into other than God's values and God's system. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.